Hello and welcome everyone. Welcome to our final conference titled as Educate and as an agent of societal change. My name is Onur Sultan and I'm a research fellow and project coordinator from Beyond Horizon International Strategic Studies Group. And Beyond Horizon is a non-profit think tank that is specialized in security-related matters. And I have coordinated the efforts of Educate team in the last 24 months. Today, we have put together this conference with our speakers to discuss and introduce to you the Educate project and also see how it can contribute to the societal challenges that we see today, and namely and primarily radicalization and polarization. For those who come across Educate for the first time, the project was conceptualized to equal religious education and hence religion to counter the pernicious effects of these two societal challenges, and started on the 1st of January 2020. In the last 24 months, we have developed 45 textbooks, 18 infographics, 18 fact sheets, and 96 videos in a duration of 2 years. And the oral curriculum that has students and teachers from Judaism, Catholicism, Islam, Orthodoxy, Protestantism, and non-confessional ethics as target group is spread across 5 languages. Our main products has been primarily been in English, French, and Dutch. And for implementation purposes, we have partly translated them in English, in Slovenian, and Greek. I see that many more guests are coming also, so I will wait for a few minutes more to see everybody's here. Yeah. So now I will introduce to you our speakers. Our first speaker is Professor Didier Profe, who led the work package 2 deep content production. He's full professor at the Faculty of Theology and Religious Studies of KU Leuven, Belgium. He holds the chair of the Center for Teachers Training Religion and the Center for Peace Ethics of KU Leuven. He teaches religious initiation, communication and formation, didactics of religion and post-Holocaust Jewish-Christian relations. He is also responsible for the didactical website Thomas for Religious Education in the Low Countries and promoter of the International Research Group on Enhancing Catholic School Identity, ECSI. Welcome, Professor Profe.
Thank you.
Our other speaker is Professor Ekaterini Tsalompuni, who leads Work Package 3, Shallow Content Production. She is Associate Professor at the Faculty of Theology of Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. She teaches New Testament exegesis and theology. Her research focuses on the socio-historical background of the New Testament, exegesis of the Gospels and Pauline letters, as well as ecological hermeneutics and gender theory. Welcome, Ekaterini.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you.
Jelle Kremers leads Work Package 4, Socialization. He is Associate Professor at the Evangelical Theological Faculty in Leuven, Belgium. He is the chair of the Department of Religious Studies and Missiology and coordinates the Institute for the Study of Freedom of Religion or Belief. His research and teachings focus on religion, state relations, and the positions of minority relations in Western Europe. He is a member of the Committee PEGO, the committee responsible for Protestant evangelical religious education in Flemish primary and secondary schools. Welcome, Jelle.
Thank you very much, Onur.
Our next speaker is Philip van Alford. He is teacher of Protestant religion in the PhDI. The secondary school Educate was implemented in Ghent, Belgium. He studied theology at Leiden University and got his master's degree at ETF Leuven. He is currently a teacher of Protestant religion in different schools in Flanders and prison chaplain in Oudenaarde. He is also active in Christian Reconciliation Ministry, Africa, Europe. Welcome, Philip. Got his master's degree at ETF Leuven. He is currently a teacher of Protestant religion in different schools in Flanders and prison chaplain in Oudenaarde. He is also active in Christian Reconciliation Ministry, Africa, Europe. Welcome, Philip. Got his master's degree at ETF Leuven. He is currently a teacher of Protestant religion in different schools in Flanders and prison chaplain in Oudenaarde. He is also active in Christian Reconciliation Ministry, Africa, Europe. Welcome, Philip. Got his master's degree at ETF Leuven. He is currently a teacher of Protestant religion in different schools in Flanders and prison chaplain in Oudenaarde. He He is also active in Christian Reconciliation Ministry of Africa Europe. Welcome, Philip. What is necessary to be a Didier Profe? He is currently a teacher of Protestant religion in different schools in Flanders and prison chaplain in Oudenaarde. He is also active in Christian Reconciliation Ministry of Africa Europe. Welcome, Philip. What is necessary to be a Didier Profe? He is currently a teacher of Protestant religion in different schools in Flanders and prison chaplain in Oudenaarde. He is also active in Christian Reconciliation Ministry of.
Thank you.
What a welcoming.
Yes,
That was
exactly. I was going to say
very
the same
good presentation. Thank you very much.
Excellent. I think we had a technical report. This is to our speakers. Since we have breakout rooms in the second hours of the session, the format of the meeting is not a webinar, but it's a meeting. So basically, every one of us, whoever opens his microphone, is allowed to speak. And that's why I think we had this problem. Please mute yourself, and so that we don't have the same problem again. Otherwise, it's going to be problematic. Thank you.
And I think some of you are listening on Facebook, and the Facebook audio and video is coming with delay, and so we hear the same sound again. Please mute your microphone if you don't speak, and please mute your browsers if you watch on Facebook also. Thank you.
Yeah. Our next speaker is Marco Velguni, who works at Faculty of Theology at the University of Ljubljana. He was responsible for parts of the adaptation of the developed material to Slovenian context and their implementation in the field trials. In addition to his work as a researcher at the faculty, he has been the international coordinator for a large school center in Ljubljana. His fields of research revolve around education. Welcome.
Hi, thank you, Anar.
Last, we have Christos Fradelos, who is the teacher of Orthodox religion in the first experimental junior high school of Hania, where EDUC8 project is currently being implemented. He holds a master's in theology degree from National and Kapodistrian University of Athens, Greece, and from Neapolis University of Paphos, Cyprus. He is also an associate for religious education in Volos Academy for Theological Studies. He is the author of the book Islamic Brotherhoods in the Ottoman Crete. Welcome, Christos.
Thank you,
Just a few house-writing items. Today we're going to be together for 2 hours. And as I said, the meeting is in a meeting format, so it's not a webinar. We would appreciate if during the sessions, we're not going to take questions, but in the second hour, we're going to have breakout rooms where you will be able to ask your questions directly to the people that are presenting their work about implementation in different contexts, and then we will discuss further. Now I want to share my screen to show you the agenda and start meeting. So as was announced in the invitation link, in the first session, in the first 20 minutes, I'm going to introduce the project. Between 10:20 and 10:40, Professor Profe is going to expand upon appreciation of the other and religious pedagogical reflections. From 10:40 to 11, we're going to talk about shallow models, and Professor Salampuni will talk about discuss if they can be key for empathy and the closer society. At 10 o'clock exactly, we will have a break for 10 minutes. And when we come back, we will continue with Professor Kremers, talking about in-class discussion and socialization, and discuss if they can be a game changer in building bridges. From 11:30 until 11:50, I think we're going to have an extremely insightful breakout room sessions, because we will talk about implementation of the project in 3 different settings. In Belgium, where we have multi-religious educational religious educational system. In Slovenia, where the state does not have any formal religious education in public schools. And finally, we will talk about Greek experience, where we have a mono-religious educational system. And in the last 10 minutes, we will bid farewell and make our closing remarks. So I'm starting to introduce the project, and I think we are a bit late behind the schedule. So last month, together with Professor Profe, we published a paper, a policy paper, policy brief, in the last issue of Horizon Insights. And there, in this chapter, we try to look into the relationship, the nexus between religion, radicalization, and polarization. I should remind you that this project, EDUC8 project, came as a fruit of a European Union call for radicalization. So we were actually expected to find a solution to come up with a project that is going to answer and try to tackle the challenge of radicalization at that time. So basically, religion is generally seen as part of the problem, but our approach was to try to see it as part of a solution based on the insights that we had. And so in this paper, we kind of reflected this look. Basically, what the generalists, like since 9/11, we see that radicalization and polarization feed each other in unending cycles. And the society becomes more tense after each attack and after each terrorist event that we see. Radicals generally incite to violence by framing the status quo as unjust, exploitative, oppressive, or heretical, whereas polarizers ask to show no mercy to the differences and different. So it is this context that we came and we thought that it's first of all important to kind of contextualize this religion within the overall radicalization discussion, and based on that to show how EDUC8 has potential to add value. Just to first of all, I want to say that there are many drivers of radicalization, and each context has its own kind of specificities. And so there's no uniform and linear process into radicalization, and religion is just one item within the overall, if you may, the overall kind of menu. So, and also there is no linear link between radicalization and joining terrorist organizations. So let's say we have a person that has radicalized. This doesn't mean that this person is going to join a terrorist organization or commit a terrorist crime. So that being said, what I'm trying to say that there's need for multi-factor and contextual approach to radicalization and this issue. In this regard, I want to talk about a research that was published in 2018 by Professor Hans Beckhardt and Ardian Şavkuçi and Ahmet Yayla. And the research included semi-structured interviews with 63 ISIS defectors. And it showed how different contexts can actually create different motivations among target groups. The study shows for the Westerners, offers of a real salary, arranged marriages, sex slaves for men, traditional living for women, free housing and other amenities, along with the honors bestowed by ISIS on foreign fighters who come to Syria and Iraq, were real attractions, as many felt their lives to be lacking dignity, purpose, significance, and honor. Here we see that polarization comes as the flip side of the coin. While preparing the proposal to the European Commission, I had talked with a person in an organization that is involved in de-radicalization of the radicals. And this person said, in each case, we see a person making the travel to Syria and Iraq. If we scratch the surface, we find a familial, social, or economic problem. The perceived urgency or greatness of that problem pushes that person to think if he goes, he will have a better life there and that problem behind. And there is another person that we have been in contact with. His name is Ridwan Safi, and he is involved in de-radicalization of the foreign terrorist fighters and homegrown terrorists in a Belgian prison. I want to cite him as in his own words, and I think this statement is going to put out onto our perspective how radicalization and polarization cannot be taken per se solely and cannot be tackled, but we have to tackle these two phenomena at the same time. He says he talks about returning foreign terrorist fighters. They would usually start talking about that they have love for Islam. They want to live in an Islamic state. They want to live somewhere where Sharia is implemented. When you go deeper with them in the conversation, when conversations are more meaningful, I would hardly hear them speak about Islamic state or the implementation of Sharia. All I would hear are the injustices they've experienced in the past: racism, discrimination, poverty, lack of opportunity. The majority of them are very young people. Many of them haven't even reached the age of 18. They are frustrated, alienated socially, young people who are in search of identity and meaning in life, young people that did not feel at home in their own countries where they were born, who felt they were not appreciated. That being said, I'm not trying to, or we're not trying to say that religion has no instrumentality in radicalization and overall what we see around, but I want to highlight that the role of religion has been basically overstated. So there are two areas that religion is extremely important. The first one is that religion is an inalienable part of one's identity. Whether a person is practicing or non-practicing, religion is a part of his identity. So we need to take this into consideration. The second is that irrespective of whether they believe in underlying core tenets or not, embracing extremist ideologies help leaders of such groups overcome collective action problems, using the ideology, religion as a vehicle to tool to raise units of men ready to accept the cost of fighting and death. So religion as a kind of catalyzer to make the people more committed to the cause as they believe helps these terrorist recruiters and terrorist leaders to raise units in this regard. Also, while preparing the proposal, we kind of had insights from different research. This is the result of a peer research that was conducted in 2017 in 15 countries in Western Europe, and the respondents were asked if in their hearts Muslims want to impose their religious law on everyone else in the country, and they were asked if they agreed or disagreed with the statements. And in these 15 countries that we see that the probability of a person who knows a great deal about Islam is by 75% to disagree with this statement in Switzerland, whereas if the person knows less about Islam, the odds are 71%. So knowing a little bit about that religion, about Islam, makes a kind of a small change in the attitude of the person. If you look at different European contexts, we see that this difference in Denmark is 13%, which is the most. And in countries like Finland, it's even like -3% or -8% in UK. But we see that if a person knows another Muslim, this causes a great change in the attitude of the person. For example, in Switzerland, the odds or the chances of a person to disagree with this statement if a person knows a Muslim is 85%. If he does not know a Muslim, this chances is 48%. So the difference is 37%. We see that also called as a contact theory or contact hypothesis. We see that if we bring together different people from different identities together in a meaningful way, we can build bridges and we can kind of create a more peaceful society based on the insights that we get from this research. Another insight that we got was from Breakout project. And this Breakout project was the first substantial research project on religion and education that was financed by the European Commission. The project lasted for 3 years between 1st of March 2006, that started on the 1st of March 2006, and it lasted 3 years. And the project entailed qualitative and quantitative research in Germany, England, France, the Netherlands, Norway, Estonia, Russia, and Spain, mainly focusing on religion in the lives and schooling of students in the age of 14 to 16. And the question that they were trying to answer was how far the religion is a factor of stereotypes and conflicts or a source of dialogue and peaceful living together. As an EDUC8 project, that's our point. We think that there's a kind of, we can use, like religion has potential to be used in both ways, and we want to see it in the part of the solution, not on the part of the problem. And I want to list some of the key findings of the study. The first finding was students believe that the main preconditions for peaceful coexistence between people of different religions are knowledge about each other's religions and worldviews, shared interests, and joint activities. The second takeaway was students for whom religion is important in their lives are more likely to respect the religious background of others and value the role of religion in the world. This is totally against the common kind of understanding at the societal level. And last, most students would like to see school dedicated more to teaching about different religions, to guiding them towards a particular religious belief or worldview. This is also extremely important, and I think it shows the way forward in the religious education in schools. So Educate actually was created to connect the dots that I have discussed so far. We think that radicalization and polarizations are two faces of the same coin, and it's not possible to tackle only one without tackling the other. Otherwise, the solution is not come. We need to kind of disrupt the cycle between the two. While the violent interpretation of religions is not unavoidable, it does not constitute their essence and can be said even a perversion of it. A well-established religious identity actually protects against violent radicalization because it gives the tenets and basics to that person and allows less space for manipulation and propaganda. In any authentic religion and worldview, there is potential to change, to criticize, to overrule, to transform violence into tolerance and peace. And it's incumbent upon researchers to go and find interpretations to build a more peaceful society. Diversity and friendships among diverse groups is the remedy of intolerance and the violence that we see today. And most students would like to see school dedicated to more to teaching about different religions than to guiding them towards a particular religious belief or worldview. This is the last kind of guiding principle. So Educate is conceptualized to build resilience among youth against radicalization and polarization through religious education. The project aims to equip the youth with the basics of other faiths to develop mutual understanding and empathy, to lay solid foundation in their own faith, to make them less open to manipulation and incitation to violence, to create teacher-led in-class discussions, to cultivate dialogue and appreciation of the other, and finally to build friendships among religious leaders and Jews through smart encounters. Each of these elements that I discuss now in terms of aims will be detailed by the following speakers, so I'm not going to go deeper into those. And the methodology that we follow is to give shallow models in order to keep the youth with the basics of other faiths first, and then deep models to lay solid foundation in their own faith, then in-class discussions to cultivate dialogue and appreciation of the other, and finally socialization to build friendships among religiously diverse individuals through smart encounters. In the methodology that we propose, we have developed materials in 6 religions or world systems, if you may. And those are in chronological order: Judaism, Catholicism, Islam, Orthodoxy, Protestantism, and non-confessional ethics. The strong points of the project that they target most vulnerable group, the youth. They can be used in schools, prisons, youth work, etc. In many different settings, the project has potential to be helpful. The content that has been produced are modular, easily replicable in all member states with small adaptations in language. The project overall does not point fingers to any religious group or religious identity. And basically, the project is not old school. It's highly visual, attractive, and interesting, as I will detail in a few seconds. So, as you see, this is a kind of a screenshot from the website. Here you see the shallow models, and below that, the deep model courses. Then we have infographics, and then finally the fact sheets. We had prepared a kind of video about Educate's possibilities that we have finally kind of in the last phase of the project added to the project. From now on, the teachers of religious education can sign in and register as teachers, and they can create their own classrooms, add their students to these classrooms. They can evaluate the students, whatever the progress of their students, and mark their kind of points. And we think that this is a great kind of possibility. what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll the video to the relevant place where we can see how this is done. And then I will also show you another good thing about the project that we think is going to make it add more value. So for the sake of time, I'm just passing the most important parts. Just to let you know, this is real time. So the time that we see in terms of when this email is going to come and how the activation code is going to be implemented is done on the real time. So it gives us a kind of idea about how long it takes to make registration and also how long it's going to take to do the things, as you see.
Please unmute yourself. Onur, please unmute yourself. So the class code is copied and spread to the students who are following the same course. The student directly enters that code and is registered to the class. So now the teacher sees which students are in his classroom, and he can now actually follow their progress. And he sees this student, what he did wrong and what he did right, and basically he can follow and even print the results of the student. So to use the time in an efficient way, I'm passing you this now, and I want to finally show you another
element that we added finally to the project, which is our new application. You can download and use it. Oops, sorry. We're a bit over the time, so I just want to finally talk about our consortium members. The consortium is comprised of Beyond Horizon as coordinator, Kavlöven responsible for Judaism and Catholicism, ETF responsible for Protestantism, Sira responsible for Islam, Aristotle University of Thessaloniki responsible for the shallow models and also responsible for the relevant work package on orthodoxy. Volos Academy for Theological Studies responsible for orthodox deep models. NMF, the organization that implemented the project in youth settings in Finland. University of Ljubljana responsible for creating the content for ethics. Lapino Albino responsible for preparation of the videos, as you see, and Ariscon responsible for developing the web tools and the application for the EDUC8. Thank you so much. Now I leave the floor to Professor Profe and to discuss the next item. Professor Profe, the floor is yours.
So good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
And you see the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I'm happy to introduce to you into the religious pedagogical framework that was the foundation for creating EDUC8. I will start with some fundamental insights and introduce you into the interreligious, pedagogical, and ethical perspectives of EDU8. The starting point is, in fact, the falsification of the sociological secularization paradigm. We see that religions do not disappear. They play an important role in almost all conflicts in the world. And as Onur said, our question became how they can become part of the solution instead of the problem. The baseline of the website you can read comes from Hans Kuhn, who says, no peace among the nations without peace among the religions. We see worldviews and religions not as monolithical or statical, but as open for different interpretations. We recognize that every religion and every worldview has a violent potential in itself. But on the other hand, we also stress that authentic religion and worldview has also the potential for change, to criticize itself, to transform from violence into tolerance. And the basic assumption is that peace and brotherhood or sisterhood belong to the core of religions and non-confessional ethics. For us, it makes no sense, because it has no educational impact, to speak about different religions. We prefer to speak with religions and from within different religious perspectives. So we don't use a helicopter perspective. We all are participants in this inter-worldview dialogue. Now, what is now this inter-religious perspective? First of all, we reject an exclusivistic approach that only says that my own religion is true and that all the other religions are rejectable. We also do not accept an inclusivistic paradigm that says that other religions are only true as far as they reflect my own religious truths. We also do not accept pluralism that says that all religions are finally the same and thus, in fact, interchangeable human constructions. We do also reject particularism that sees the religions as closed universe that cannot communicate with each other. We prefer another approach, namely an approach that says that religions have their own particularity, but overlap historically, sociologically, and ethically, and they can communicate with each other with at the horizon of it a desire for peace and harmony. Now, how does such an inter-worldview dialogue now take place? We call it granting each other linguistic hospitality. You could compare different religions with different languages to relate to reality. This idea is based on the French Protestant philosopher Paul Ricoeur in his famous book Sur la traduction. Religious education is then, in the first place, learning to understand your own language in a good way. We call this learning in religion. Secondly, when you come then to a dialogue, the first thing you have to do is to learn the vocabulary and the grammar of other languages. That's learning about other religions. And the third step is then that you enter into the religious language of the other and you learn from religion. You could say in this way that inter-worldview encounter is an exercise of translation between different religions and worldviews, knowing that a perfect translation does not exist, that every translation has also a risk of losing meaning or changing meaning in relation to the original text. We know that you can never speak perfectly the language of the other, and that people will always hear that you come from another language. So the idea is also that you can never completely understand the other, but language systems also overlap. Some are closer to each other than others, which is also the same for religions. Translation does not stop at losing meaning. Also through translation, you can find new meanings even in your own language. That means that inter-worldview dialogue could be also enriching for your own understanding of your own religion. To summarize, to dialogue as translation means that you first learn to speak better your own language. Secondly, that you grant hospitality, linguistic, religious hospitality to the other. Thirdly, that you also accept to be invited in the world of the other, and through this whole process that you come to a better understanding of your own religion. That's in fact the interreligious perspective. If we translate this now in a pedagogical perspective, I refer here to an article I wrote on the website of the Belgian National News, how to shape inter-worldview dialogue between religions and worldview courses within education organized by the government. Well, I would say that this is based on two central pedagogical principles. The overruling idea is that there is no inter-worldview dialogue without the concerned worldviews. So it's not that we position ourselves in a kind of neutral state, that we are all engaged, we are all participants, and no one has the helicopter perspective. The first principle is the principle of hospitality. In the dialogue, we welcome the other in our own worlds. We are receptive. We don't like to convert the other. Of course, we are aware, we are even proud of our own identity, and we don't feel the urge to change it for the sake of the other. Secondly, hospitality also means that we want to be a guest in the story of the other. And when I am a guest, I am modest, I'm respectful, I'm open, I'm curious about the identity of the other. I like to be grateful for being with the other, but always in the awareness of difference and even at some point incomprehensibility. I am sensitive for my own prejudices, but I have also empathy. I try to understand the other, encounter the other as he really is. In such an inter-worldview exchange, I dare not only name similarities, but also differences. I appreciate, but sometimes I have also problems with the other. That is what happens when you're hospital or you create hospitality for the other in your own worldview. The second principle is what we call crossing over and coming back. In the dialogue, I cross over from my own identity into the worldview space of the other. And then I come back to my own worldview understanding. In the best case, I am transformed through this encounter. So it is really for us an encounter with the real other in his or her context. And it's not just using a kind of checklist of a comparative table with formal characteristics of the other. I'm really interested to meet the other as he is. How does this second principle now works? It works in 3 steps. The first step is that you prepare to be received in the place of the other. It's like if you're going to travel, that you first read a travel guide before your holidays. And you ask, what is my own tradition saying about the topic of the encounter? What is the grammar and the vocabulary of the other? What do I think about the way the other tradition looks to a certain topic? What makes me curious? What frightens me? And that's the first step, preparing for the reception at the other. The second step then is crossing over. I enter into the space of the other. And of course, I am not a participant in the world of the other, I am a guest. And hospitality does not mean that I am not allowed to pose critical questions about and to the other. In such a crossing over, I give the other the chance to translate, to explain, to justify his own tradition and identity, also towards themselves. I'm not looking for an easy, superficial compromise, and I have also sensitivity for resentment, for resistance, as well as learning to deal with this, understanding that in the encounter, not everything can be harmonized. So I learn in some way in crossing over to bear with one another, to learn to deal with things of alienation, even of frustration and irritation. And the third step is I come back to my own space, asking, what have I learned? Are my presumptions still correct? Do I need to nuance, adjust, revise my view of the other? Did the other one also perhaps learn something about himself through the encounter? And what have I learned through this about my own tradition, my own identity, who I am, and who I want to become for myself and for the other? So that's the pedagogical translation of this inter-religious perspective. The third step then is, how have we didacticized this whole process? As been explained, we have created an online medium based on digital storytelling, which is very easy in some way to get into the environment of oneself and of the other. It's a narrative-based approach. It's not theoretical. The different religions can express themselves from within. And of course, the digital world is a medium with which students are familiar. The shallow modules, together with the infographics and the fact sheets, or you could say the first step in the process. You properly prepare the journey to the other. So the fact sheets and infographics deliver the objective aspects of different worldviews. It's a form of learning about. You learn the glossary, the grammar of the other, but it happens always through a narrative self-presentation of the different worldviews. So you learn from the other. You listen to the other's text in his or her own language. And this happens with the fictitious students who writes a personal letter, emphasizing also especially the everyday aspects of religious life through storytelling. You present the religion from its particular perspective. This is the infographic and the fact sheet. I will find them on the website. Then we go to the deep model. In the deep modules, you have an actual encounter between worldviews. So this is a very dynamic aspect of the whole project. So here you see that students are confronted with the outer worldview perspective of the other. So the other starts to ask questions about my own religion. Sometimes, it's shocking. Sometimes young people are confused. They are angry sometimes even. So, for example, take the Catholic deep modules. We deal there with different prejudices about Catholics. For example, the module on diversity, the critique that Catholicism is exclusivistic and that Jesus supports a narrow nationalism. And the modules on text of terror, the critique that the Bible asks to give up your family, even sacrificing your own children or your own parents. These are shocking presuppositions, but it's an invitation to come to a kind of clarification about the position of, in this case, Catholicism. Ecology, the critique that Catholicism is the reason of the climate crisis, or the module on war and peace, where we see that other students, when they visit the worldview of Catholics, formulate the critique that the Catholic just war theory justifies violence and war. And through this confrontation, everyone is invited to seek for the authentic meaning of one's own worldview. So you start by recognizing that there is historically a violent potential in religions and worldviews. You understand also that these violent interpretations are often a perversion of the essence of religions and worldviews. You give pupils the opportunity to learn alternative, it's a hermeneutical approach, to learn alternative, more authentic, non-violent interpretations of their own and other traditions, in this way to de-radicalize worldviews. And through the search and finding of alternative, non-violent interpretations, students of different faiths and worldviews can connect or reconnect with themselves, with their own tradition, with the tradition of others, in a common sense for humanity. And that is this rainbow, this horizon of peace that is possible and that leads to a depolarization among worldviews. And this happens through all the different participants on 4 different topics, on 4 different deep modules. I come to my conclusion. In fact, the basic idea of EDUC8 is that the deepest division today does no longer run between worldviews and religions, but between closed or violence, and on the other hand, open, peaceful variants of each worldview. We try to enable students to develop a strong, deep-rooted identity in their own tradition, which is at the same time respectfully open to other traditions. The idea is that Christians become better Christians, that Jews become better Jews, that Muslims become better Muslims, and atheists become better atheists. This goes further than only respect for each other, because respect is very formal. It's really about understanding and appreciating the other. And we hope that such an encounter with the other can serve strengthening a democratic society. Or to put it in the motto of the European Union, used since 2000, EDUC8 wants to create unity in diversity. Thank you for your attention. Onur, back to you.
Professor Profe, thank you so much for this insightful presentation. Now we are passing to Professor Ekaterini Salampuni from University of Thessaloniki, Aristoteles University of Thessaloniki. She's going to discuss shallow models and see if they can be key for empathy and a closer society. Over to you, Ekaterini. Thank you.
Thank you, Onur. I would like to share my screen as well. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to present in a few words let's say, the rationale behind the shallow modules and how we more or less laid emphasis on this empathic, let's say, dimension of our material. And I would not like to repeat, but somehow I would like to further develop on a practical level what already Professor Profe has so nicely explained. So according to the, let's say, the description of our package of the preparation actually of this shallow module material, as you can see, the idea was to equip the youth with the basics of other faiths. So the first thing was information targeted to develop mutual understanding and empathy. And this was a very, very important aspect of shallow module as well. So those from other faiths, how a person in respective religion believes and how this belief is reflected in daily life to include rituals, traditions, and worshiping styles. So that was more or less let's say, the general framework within which we placed all our efforts, and we worked together to create this material. Of course, we had to work on religious tradition, but also on non-religious, atheist or philosophy, ethics. And this was also a challenge, how to include different worldviews, different kinds of ethical attitudes and behavior, and to create, let's say, somehow a basis for the material that would come in the module. The partners in this package was my university, and we had the honor to be the coordinators of shallow module package, but also the Faculty of Theology, Catholicism in KU Leuven, and the Faculty of Theology, Judaism in KU Leuven again, EDF again in Leuven, the Evangelische Theologische Fakulteit Leuven, the University of Ljubljana, SIRA, and Beyond the Horizon, of course, consortium. And I would like once more to thank deeply and sincerely all good colleagues and partners for this collaboration. It has been a wonderful experience. And if I may say, from my perspective, I've become wiser and from this encounter, and I'm really grateful. And I hope that our students as well will profit. And somehow this kind of cooperation is reflected in our material. So now, what we had to create was, let's say, three kinds of material. The first one was short videos for each religious tradition and plus ethics. So we had, these were really short, about 7 minutes or more or less. And then a student's book that somehow further develop the ideas presented in the short videos and help students somehow deepen and focus on certain aspects of this material. And then the teacher's handbook that provided extra material, ideas, tips, bibliography, links, and we worked a lot on this part of work, providing material on, that could be found also on the internet, which actually I think during this pandemic crisis proved to be very useful, since not everybody, not everywhere can have access to libraries and let's say academic material. Of course, our theoretical and didactic foundations were these that Professor Profe already has described, but I will just comment on some of them in respect to our particular work in the shallow module material. What we wanted to do was to provide a concise and comprehensive introduction to religious traditions and non-religious plus philosophical worldviews. So the first, let's say, purpose was informative, to provide as much and sound material, but not that much, and more or less trigger, let's say, our students and somehow try to find more in their own research or during their classes. The second purpose was to assist students in the process of familiarization and evaluation, appreciation of these traditions. And this was also very interesting. And I think this was is also important either in mono-religious systems, educational systems, or multi-religious educational systems in Europe. And then, of course, this material should be somehow linked to the material provided in the module, which was a totally different or further elaboration of this and discussion of this religious tradition. And finally, create necessary material for an open process of learning. Although we have the books, of course, these must be remain open in the sense that the teacher and the students each time decide what they would like to see, how far they would like to explore this material. And especially the students have, the teachers have also the possibility to use extra material that can be found in the teacher's book, or perhaps choose from the material in students' book according to the time schedule and, of course, the students' population they have. And, of course, a very, very important aspect of this kind of work was empathy. It's not just, as Professor Polarisation nicely said, it's not just to respect, but somehow to involve ourselves in a more, let's say, personal way of encountering the other, and in a way know the other on a more empirical, more or less level. And for creating this empathy, let's say, we laid focus on two things. First, on the content of the package, so that they could promote this way of approach. And of course, by adopting let's say, an autobiographic, in a way, narrative in our videos. And we decided for the latter, because we also wanted to comply to the general style and the general ideas that we had in this deep module as well, so that there would be a transition that was easy for our students to do. Regarding now the content of the material, of course, in this material, we try to focus on the basics of each tradition. And that was also a challenge, I must say, because as you all know, we talk generally about Orthodox Christianity, for example, or Catholicism or Islam, but within this general tradition, there are further local materials, further different traditions that should somehow be included and not excluded in a way, and that was really a challenge. So we decided to focus mainly on the common traits of all these sub-traditions. Then one very important aspect was to highlight the communal aspect of religious or non-religious traditions, how actually these traditions inform and shape our communal lives and our self-understanding. And we wanted also to have some constructive self-criticism in our videos, not that much, of course, due to the length of the videos, but there were always some self-critical remarks that could help perhaps students further discuss in the class these remarks. And the main, let's say, spirit was to engage our students, our class in every tradition in a very positive and critical way. Positive and appreciative, critical in a way that one has to ask questions, one has to compare with their own traditions, and one has also to make decisions and think and evaluate aspects of these traditions. Regarding now the narrative, as I've said, we decided this first-person narrative. It's a kind of having a kind of an autobiographic self in its case, these letters written by students at the age of our viewers, and who actually speak of their own tradition and of their own habits and customs and the way they see their religion. It's a kind, as we say in New Testament and rhetorical studies, of prosopopoeia, of actually taking over a role in a kind of theater in good sense. So it was a kind of our students representing their self, a typical member of these traditions. And why we did that? Because we wanted to present the religious other as a concrete person and not just as a general idea or an abstract notion. We wanted our students to think of the other as somebody who has a name, a family, dreams, a life, thoughts. Of course, sometimes it can happen in our classes in the sense that we have students that come from different traditions, but sometimes we don't, especially in my context in Greece. So it would be interesting to have even this kind of approach. And of course, we wanted also our presenters to be young persons at the age of our viewers. So we wanted the perspective of a young person because youth was the target group of our project first. And of course, young people are, let's say, the most vulnerable in this situation that has to do with religious tradition and so on. And the idea was again to talk about one's tradition from within the tradition and from below, in the sense that we don't have a theologian, academic talking about the religion in a very distant and abstract way, but somebody who comes from within tradition, sometimes in a very simple way, presents things and tries to explain how things work in their own tradition. And finally, we wanted to be an open invitation to the audience to feel, let's say, comfortable, to feel that it's something familiar, to familiarize and associate themselves with these young speakers in our present videos. So that was the idea behind this way of presenting things. And of course, our ultimate purpose was to create empathy, to create a safe, let's say, environment where people would feel comfortable to encounter other realities, religious and non-religious realities, accept, think critically, reflect upon them, and constructively first understand the other, and on the other hand, understand themselves. So it was a two, let's say, way process. So if you visit the EDUC8 webpage, you can see that the shallow module material was presented in this unit: Judaism, Catholicism, Islam, Orthodox Protestantism, and and ethics. And you could see there that the material was, first of all, there was this video where you had young narrators, as I said, who presented their material. So there was Moshe from Judaism, Sarah from Catholicism, Samir for Islam, Eleni from Orthodoxy, Hannah from Protestantism, and Iris from ethics. And this material was also, in these videos, these young speakers talked about their main feasts in their tradition, or what holy books and symbols they have in their own tradition, whether they were religious buildings, worships and ritual, and women and environment and moral values. Also this kind of practical and ethical aspect of all these traditions. And then this was accompanied by two books, as I said before: the student's book, where you had the transcript of video script, multiple choice questions, role play games, and questions for discussion, some questions to reflect upon, and so on, and a glossary, a short glossary, so that students could somehow understand the material both in the videos and in their exercises in student's book. And the teacher's book was a further enhancement of the student's book. There were further with material and extra information about each tradition, teaching tips, extra exercises, glossary, and a web links list and bibliography. Now, in the final minutes of my presentation, we'll shortly show you just a small sample, if I may, of our material, and I will focus in this in this part, especially on the videos, which were somehow our special, let's say, work done there because of this, as I've said, let's say, need to make them as immediate, as direct as possible. And allow me to present something from Orthodox Christianity. You can find the material, of course, if you want, in the EDUC8 web page, and I'm sure you all have visited it. If you haven't done that, please do that, because it's really worth doing it. It's really a nice and very modern and very helpful, let's say, web page. Now I will share my, I will share now the video, and I will show you just a small excerpt from here, not the full thing, just to see this personal and informative both ways direction of the material.
Hi, my name is Elady, and I'm an Orthodox Christian. I would like to talk to you about my religion. The name Orthodox comes from two Greek words, namely orthos, which means right, and doxa, which means belief or thinking. Therefore, Orthodox means right belief or thinking. The gifts of bread and wine. In the liturgy, we celebrate Eucharist. That reminds us of Jesus Christ's Last Supper with his friends and disciples, his death and resurrection. The gifts of bread and wine are offered and are consecrated. We believe that they are changed into the body and blood of Christ spiritually. At the end of the liturgy, the priest invites the members of the congregation to receive it. Through its consumption, we believe that we remain in communion with Jesus Christ, but also with the rest of the community. At the end of the liturgy, small pieces of bread are also offered to all participants, a reminiscence of the common meals that ancient Christians held when they met. Our parish church is very important for our family life, not only because of the celebration of the great feast and the divine liturgy, but because some of the most important events of our family life take place there. Today, for example, my young sister is going to get baptized and become a full member of the Orthodox Church. During the ceremony, she will get her Christian name. She will be dressed in white new clothes and wear a cross. Although in ancient times, people were baptized as adults, today, in the Orthodox Church, children are usually baptized in the early months of their lives. The baptism will be performed by the priest, and the godparents of my soon-to-be baptized sister will be there to help. They will be her spiritual parents and responsible for her growing up following the teachings of the Orthodox Church. My sister will be called Sophia, after one of my grandmothers. During the ceremony, the priest will immerse my sister 3 times into the water of the font in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. This is a symbol of dying and being reborn into a new life, following the example of Jesus Christ, who died and rose from the dead. No surprise that this is an important day in our family. After the ceremony, we will celebrate with a large dinner and music, and my lucky sister will get a lot of presents. Women also participate in all worshipping events in our church and volunteer in the social work of our parish by preparing meals for the poor or visiting families in need. Although we are regarded equal members of the community, we are not allowed to become priests or have some other public role in the life of the community. It's a pity, but as it is often said, this is a matter of tradition and history. As members of a religious community, but also of society, we are expected to live according to our faith and also act in ways that reflect this faith. Loving God and our neighbor, either Christian or non-Christian, is the highest command. And besides our regular worship and participation in Eucharist, we have to show our love and solidarity to other human beings, but also our respect to the rest of God's creation. Almsgiving and also a life of humility and careful and respectful use of goods are some of the most important practical aspects of Orthodox life.
I'm sure now you had a small, let's say, taste of what the idea was behind these Shalom module videos, and that was the spirit in the rest of the material that I encourage you to visit and see and appreciate. So, and this, of course, you can see it was from the perspective of a young girl coming from the Greek Orthodox tradition, and she actually addressed different kinds of material. And of course, there are two books as well, one for students and one for teachers for the Shalom module part, where you can actually, the students can further explore the ideas presented in our videos. Finally, and this is my last word, I think that I would like to finish my speech with this very short, let's say, quotation from Bartholomew, Our Ecumenical Patriarchate in the Orthodox World. What is needed for religion is to guide people to the depth of this truth, to a change of mind and life, and to mutual understanding. This is indeed the core of our religious traditions, and this is our hope that we probably manage somehow to contribute to this, let's say, direction through the shallow material of EDUC8. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eleni, for this great presentation. Dear guests, now we're going to give a 10-minute break. Please just dim your screens and mute yourself. We will be here back at 11:20. And sorry for 10 minutes kind of delay in the program schedule. Thanks a lot. Thank you. We will see each other at 11:20. Yeah, welcome back. And now we're continuing with Professor Jelle Kremers. The subject is in-class discussion and socialization, a game changer in building bridges. The floor is yours, Jelle.
Thank you very much, Onur. Hello, good to see you all. As you have surely understood by now, a unique feature of the EDUC8 program is the modular setup. The material of the program has been developed with a certain ideal learning path in mind, which involves 4 building blocks. The first building block is the introduction to a variety of worldviews from inside a perspective, and this takes place in the shallow module, as was just explained. The second building block is the deep module, in which participants first have an interconfessional or an inner confessional conversation on probing issues. Now, unique about the EDUC8 project is that it does not aim at a dialogue about warm themes, such as compassion or joint responsibility or citizenship. It explicitly aims to come to terms with probing issues related to inter and interconfessional conflict. How do I look at the other? How do we deal with sacred or non-sacred foundational texts which use violence or discriminatory language? And how do we look at realities of conflict fueled by or integrating religious rhetoric? Discussing this first within the own worldviews allows for a honest self-critical attitude before entering into conversation with people from another worldview. And this is what we do in the third building block, the in-class conversations with people from different worldviews. The direct encounter with a fellow student with a different worldview is crucially important. That is what we say, and I will explain so soon. But if tensions and negative stereotypes or even are already present, maybe even in the classroom, how does it function? And how does this allow us to alleviate tension and to nip extremism in the bud? As I already said, we only enter into these in-class conversations after the inner confessional conversations. So to give just an example, but a quite crucial one, when we have seen that in our holy or valued book, that this book also contains seeds of violence, difficult texts with which we may feel uncomfortable in the public sphere, then we will be less inclined to idealize our own religion, and we will have much more understanding for the other, whose holy book may also contain such difficult texts. Maybe they are different, and maybe we consider them worse, but at least difficult texts about violence cannot be said to be singular to this or that religious source. Now, entering into an in-class conversation with young people from different backgrounds on hot topics is, of course, not easy. And therefore, the EDUC8 material includes a teacher training guide, which offers pedagogical frameworks and also very concrete advice on how to create the right context for these conversations and how to conduct the conversations in such a manner that all may feel safe. I have had several training sessions with teachers in Flanders, and they showed particular enthusiasm for this teacher guide, which was developed by our partners in Slovenia. The first implementation of the EDUC8 project made clear that the material indeed allows these kinds of sensitive conversations to take place, also among young participants, and they are both interesting and stimulating. In addition to these three elements, which really focus on getting to know the other and also oneself as individuals with a particular worldview, the EDUC8 package also includes a fourth building block, which we call socialization. And this builds on the earlier first encounter with the other as someone with another worldview. The aim of the socialization activities is for the participants to get to know one another on a different, a multifaceted, and a more personal level. This person with whom I am speaking is not just a Muslim, a Jew, or an atheist, but she is also funny and smart. She can be a soccer fan, a good cook, or a supportive classmate. The socialization activities aim to give particular space to building interpersonal relations which go further than just a kind introduction to the other as someone having another worldview. He or she is actually just like me. It's a person seeking to enjoy life, to struggle, this person struggling with school or family issues, with fears and with hopes, and also with certain aspirations. So in the rest of my talk, I want to tell you something more about the in-class discussions and the socialization aspects in four elements. First, the rationale. Why do we give attention to these direct conversations and socialization activities? And why do we believe that they may indeed be a game changer in interconfessional learning? Second, focusing on the socialization activities, we look at some principles. How do we envision these activities to be organized? Third, I offer you some good practices that we have seen already based on reports from our partners. And then fourth, finally, some conclusions. So why in-class conversations and socializations are so important and crucial building blocks for the EDUC8 project, which aims to combat polarization and extremism. In 2020, the Academic Journal of Beliefs and Values published a study conducted in the UK with 5,811 students between 13 and 15 years old at a variety of schools. And this study aimed to test the hypothesis that having friends who were Muslims leads to a less negative or more positive attitude vis-à-vis Muslims in general. And the study confirmed this hypothesis. Having a Muslim friend leads to a positive attitude towards this whole religious community. This was already mentioned also in Onur's story. But the authors of this article also signaled a problem, saying that not all teenagers are in a situation in which they can grow up together with Muslim peers and develop relationships with them. And this is exactly what we aim to achieve within the EDUC8 project, expressly giving space for participants to talk with someone as a Muslim or an Orthodox or a Protestant, and also to get to know them on a personal level. Now, of course, one cannot expect friendships to be grown on the basis of a few meetings, but these activities do create opportunities that are often non-existent. For it is well known that also at school, students tend to form in-groups, often following cultural or religious boundaries. And this is important in view of the development of their identity. But a too strong focus on the in-group may impede another element of healthy development. That is the formation of a sense of being part of the larger community, of one being a member of a society. The in-class discussions and socialization activities invite the participants to open up their social space, to enter into some kind of relation, even if it is only in a limited manner, with persons who do not belong to the inner circle and who may too easily be labeled as different or strange or even dangerous or bad. And in this way, the project not only allows for interconfessional rapprochement, it also generally contributes to the development of healthy young people in view of their perspective towards society. And this is also for another reason of crucial importance in view of the aims of the EDUC8 project, which is reducing polarization and extremism. It was already known in earlier research that a person who lacks psychological well-being is most vulnerable to radicalization. A recent study in the Journal of Research in Adolescence demonstrated, moreover, that this link between being psychologically vulnerable and the possibility of radicalization involves an intermediate step, and that is a distancing from society. Psychologically vulnerable people who turn their back on society develop distrust towards authority, which then in turn can lead to radicalization. So promoting the development of healthy social relations among young people in their diversity is a very important strategy in view of healthy psychological development and in view of combating radicalization among youth. So to summarize, we purposefully include in-class conversation and socialization activities in the EDUC8 program in view of creating space for the construction of new interconfessional and interpersonal relations, which directly serve the development of individuals' positive perspectives on other worldviews and thus reduce the societal polarization on the basis of confessional difference. And second, it also contributes to an individual's integration in the broader and stronger social fabric, which reduces the chance of radicalization. Now, second, what are the principles of these in-class discussions and the socialization activities? I already mentioned earlier the teacher's handbook that has been prepared for conducting in-class conversations on sensitive topics. This handbook explains many things, among which I would consider central. First, the creation of a safe space in which all are free to participate, not to participate, or also to withdraw from. Second, the in-class discussions ask for an agreement on some grounds for keeping the conversations civilized. And it is possible, so the guide explains, to think together with the students about the construction of some ground rules. And this will give them a strong feeling of ownership. If you do that, they will be more easily inclined to allow a teacher or even a fellow student to indicate when certain boundaries are crossed. One can also make use of rules established on the basis of research, and they are offered in the guide as well. Third, the guide also gives very concrete advice on how to stop and avert negative discourses from being developed, and how to invite and stimulate and help a student to develop their own thoughts, to grow in empathy, and also in self-critical reflection. From experience, we have seen that the in-class discussions can be deepening and also difficult, but the structure of the EDUC8 themes also help to keep the conversations interesting and diverse. Teachers told us, for example, that the lesson on social and environmental justice were very helpful to broaden questions of justice and not just focus on interpersonal violence. The socialization activities, as was mentioned, serve to dig a level deeper. We determined two main aims for the socialization activities. And first, the main aim is to stimulate interaction between religiously diverse students in deeper and more complex ways than before. A second important aim is that students would bond with each other over topics, activities that are not related to religion. So the aim is actually to see the other person as being more than just a member of a certain religion, but also as having certain character traits, having interests and capacities with which one can easily relate. In view of these aims, three important aspects of socialization activities were determined. They need to be out of class, they need to be smart, and they need to be repeated. So first, out of class means that the activities should take place outside of the regular lessons in schools or meeting moments in other settings. And of course, it's quite clear that a different location and or a different time gives a very different atmosphere to the activities. At the same time, however, the participants also need to experience a sense of connection of these activities to the EDUC8 program. Second, the activities need to be smart. And this means that activities must be deliberately chosen and planned to ensure that students interact with each other, particularly students who have not interacted much before the project. And third, multiple activities should be organized to sustain the interactions over a longer period of time. Having multiple activities makes sure that students are interacting more than once at least, and gives opportunity to develop some more connections. As a minimum, we advise at least 2 activities in the course of the program, and ideally they take place during the period in which the students are also going through the deep modules, and those are also entering in interconfessional dialogue within the class hours. With these elements in mind, also a guide was devised for teachers to help them determine socialization activities for their context. And the guide consists of some general principles for the socialization activities, some guidelines for planning the activities and also some example activities. Now let me present to you some examples from the test implementations of the project in Greece, in Belgium, in Slovenia, and in Finland. Note that during the implementations, socialization activities had to be interpreted very broadly for three reasons. First, because of the COVID crisis, the number and also the kind of out-of-class activities were limited and creativity was needed. Second, in some contexts, the groups were mono-religious, which meant that internal diversity became more important than interconfessional diversity. And third, at least in one Greek school, the students were all refugees and they did not speak a common language, and hence socialization activities were actually the main, if not the core element of the EDUC8 implementation. The value of the in-class conversations with students from different worldviews was quite clearly demonstrated in a school in Ghent in Belgium. The teacher of Islam reported afterwards that one of his Muslim kids had an epiphany through the conversation with an atheist classmate within the EDUC8 project. Because now in this conversation, for the first time, he discovered that also people who do not believe in God do think about ethics. They do want to do what is right and to seek to live a good life. And this tore down his prejudice that without God, only immorality is an option for life. In this school in Ghent, also 2 socialization activities were organized. And particularly the second one, a pub quiz, was very successful and reached the targets of the activities very well. Because during the quiz, in which students were necessitated to cooperate and also to put trust in each other's expertise, the conversations were lively and the consciousness of an interconfessional togetherness vanished. Because the students now were all of value in their diversity, and they actively showed interest in each other's knowledge and skills and valued each other's input positively. This confirmed the suitability of such a quiz, allowed by a strong combination of cooperation and competition. The students also indicated their enthusiasm for an alternative activity. They actually wanted to visit a real escape room together, but regrettably, also in the COVID circumstances, this could not be materialized. Also in implementations in mono-religious contexts, the value was clear of activities which allowed students to show their personal and various gifts which were not directly related to their confession. In a Greek school, students from Orthodox background together worked on projects appreciating diversity, activating also students from very religiously conservative backgrounds in welcoming the Muslim other on the basis of activities processing Jesus' story of the Good Samaritan. And I have been given some drawings which resulted out of this work, and I will show them to you here. So as you see, they were working on these topics together, promoting the integration also of Muslim children in their world. A Muslim youth group in Finland, comprising of young girls of 11 to 14 years old, also participated in the project. Yesterday, they held a socialization activity in their event room. And this event was the grand finale of the EDUC8 project implementation in Finland. The youth came together to play games and also to watch the last face-to-face video in the Muslim in Encounter playlist. This video was followed by a fruitful discussion in which the youth freely shared their ideas, raising interesting aspects and discussing them freely in a safe and diverse environment. And thereafter, they rearranged the room, put tables there to create a cozier atmosphere, and after the discussion, they had cookies and juice and snacks and played some board games. And this allowed the conversation to continue in a relaxed manner, stimulating the forging of stronger relationships. In Slovenia, there is no compulsory ethical or religious teaching in public schools. Through participation in the project, the students indicated that they really learned a lot. They particularly enjoyed the possibility to discuss with one another, for example, the basis of films. Being fairly mono-religious in class, they expressed the desire to meet people from different worldviews. Because of the corona measures, this was not possible, but socialization activities were organized online using Scriblio, Kahoot, and other apps. One student said, and I quote, "I think the power of this project is that you try to put yourself in the other person's shoes, that you're encouraged to think so that you understand something more." One teacher in Slovenia noted that the project had encouraged students to talk more about these matters. Quote, "I have heard several times from students that they were continuing to talk about these very topics at recess and lunch." That is, of course, what we aim to achieve. In Evosmos, Greece, the difficult circumstances of having no common language channels the teachers to be creative and to make particular use of socialization as a strategy to bring their youth closer together. And therefore, the whole assembly of the school teachers agreed to assign refugee kids to a small group of 3 or 4 classmates who will be responsible for helping them with the language and also with their further needs, even outside of school time if possible. And this turned out to be a real success, but if I'm correct, more info will follow in one of the upcoming presentations in the small groups. As my time runs out, let me conclude. Based on literature review and also on our personal experiences during the implementation of the EDUC8 program in multiple and very diverse European contexts, we are convinced that the fight against religious-related polarization and extremism cannot be only fought by teachers offering their students rational arguments. No, students should talk directly with one another about sensitive religion-related issues and experience in out-of-class regular smart encounters that the religious other is not just a religious other, but just another with strengths and weaknesses, character and style, someone like I am. Therefore, in-class conversations and socialization activities are integral parts of the EDUC8 program. And those who will work with the EDUC8 program will therefore be assisted with guides and concrete advice on how to integrate these elements in their own settings. Because it is crucial that young people appreciate otherness, religious and non-religious, as enriching. They learn to see the other as someone who has something to offer to me, however different he or she may be. I thank you for your kind attention and leave the floor to the next speaker.
Thank you, Yala, for this informative presentation. And I want to repeat what you said in the final part. We will continue to assist our teachers and students who want to implement EDUC8 in their own daily life or in schools with the material that we develop, and we will be happily do that. Right now, we will go to the breakout room session where we will discuss the implementation in different national settings. It's especially crucial because this way we will be able to go deeper into the mechanics of how this program was implemented and what kind of modalities should be taken into perspective during this implementation. So I kindly invite you to click on the breakout rooms option below your screen and select the breakout room that fits most your kind of needs. In the first breakout room, we're going to have Belgian experience. In the second one, the Slovenian experience. And in the third one, the Greek experience. Thank you. Hello again, everyone. I think we have come to the end of the meeting. Thank you so much for joining to today's session. And we hope to see you in the coming days, more involved in the EDUC8 project, hopefully implementing it in your own educational settings. And just to let you know that EDUC8 consortium has worked in the last 24 months in a diligent way, despite the sanitary conditions and the conditions coming with Corona, developing educational materials that amounted to 45 textbooks, 96 videos, 18 fact sheets, and 18 infographics. And we hope and we wish that you use them in your school settings and in your kind of daily work. And I just want to say that we as a whole are going to continue to develop materials and make them available for you in the coming days. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for your participation. I wish you a great day and a Merry Christmas that is coming quite soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Nur. Goodbye to everyone. Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Thank you. Goodbye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.